In 1986, Barbara Stanwyck looked at her producer and said something no network executive ever wants to hear about their million-dollar show. She called it the biggest pile of garbage she'd ever done. She wasn't wrong. Today, we're talking about what might be the most catastrophic year in television history, 1986. This was the year when not a single new show cracked the top 10. That hadn't happened since 1977. ABC hit their worst ratings since 1953. CBS bottomed out completely. And NBC was so dominant, they won 27 out of 30 weeks, which left everyone else just scrambling. What we ended up with was a graveyard, expensive failures, shattered careers, some of the most spectacular flameouts ever put on television. So let's count down the 11 biggest TV flops of 1986. We're going from bad to absolutely devastating. And hey, if you're into deep dives on forgotten television history, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like. Now, let's get into it. Number 11, Better Days.
Dialectical experience. It was a chilling.
All right, we're starting with a show that earned itself a pretty unfortunate distinction. Better Days on CBS was the very first show canceled in the entire 1986 to 87 season. It premiered October 1st. By October 29th, gone. 4 episodes made it to air. 7 more were produced, but never saw the light of day. So here's the premise. A California teenager gets forced to move into his grandfather's Brooklyn apartment after his family runs into money trouble. He ends up becoming the only white player on his high school basketball team. And yeah, you can probably already see where this is going. People magazine's Jeff Jarvis did not hold back in his year-end review. He called it a shockingly racist sitcom that looked like it had been produced by South African television. That is not a review you can spin into a positive. Other critics said the plot was dull, the scripts were weak, and none of the characters were even remotely appealing. The show never got syndicated. No home video release. It basically just vanished from television history. And honestly, that's probably for the best. Number 10. Kay O'Brien. Okay, here's a show that was actually ahead of its time, maybe by about 19 years. Kay O'Brien premiered on CBS, September 25th, 1986. Patricia Kalember starred as a 28-year-old female surgical resident, pulling 120-hour weeks at a Manhattan hospital. She's trying to navigate a male-dominated profession, dealing with an ex-boyfriend, leaning on her nurse best friend for support. Does that premise sound familiar? Because that is essentially the exact setup of Grey's Anatomy, which became one of the biggest hits in television history when it launched in 2005. Same concept. Different decade, wildly different results. The Chicago Tribune called it a so-so operation. They noted that despite swapping in a female lead, the format was still pretty formulaic. There's an interesting piece of trivia here too. The original title was Kay O'Brien, Surgeon, but they changed it because they were worried it sounded like a book that 10-year-old girls would read on rainy Saturday afternoons. The show was gone before Thanksgiving. 8 episodes aired out of 12 produced. But here's the thing. One of the creators, Bryce Zabel, went on to become chairman of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. Sometimes failure is just the first step. Number 9. Melba.
Mom, I don't believe you.
That's not how you raised us.
I did a pretty good job of raising Melba.
This one involves some genuinely terrible timing that no show could have possibly survived. Melba starred singer and actress Melba Moore as a divorced mother working as director of Manhattan's Visitor Center. The show premiered on CBS on January 28, 1986. That date might ring a bell. That was the day the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. The disaster, happened at 11:38 in the morning. By that evening, most of America was glued to news coverage. Almost nobody watched the premiere. It pulled a catastrophic 9.2 rating with a 13 share. That's been described as the lowest ratings ever for a first-run network show. And it was the lowest rated primetime evening in CBS history. CBS didn't even wait for the official numbers. 3 days later, they just pulled the show from the schedule entirely. The remaining 5 episodes got burned off on Saturday nights during the summer. One of them managed only a 5.7 rating. The reviews were brutal, even setting the timing aside. One critic said Moore looked jittery in the premiere, and it was easy to guess why. She'd read the script. Another described the show as having about as much spunk as soggy onion dip. Ouch. But here's your silver lining. Despite the sitcom disaster, 1986 was actually a strong year for Melba Moore's music. She scored 2 #1 R&B hits and got a Grammy nomination. She went back to Broadway, got inducted into the National R&B Hall of Fame in 2015, and received a Hollywood Walk of Fame star in August 2023. The sitcom was a disaster. Her career definitely wasn't. Number 8. The Ellen Burstyn Show.
Somebody once asked Grandma Moses how she painted, and she answered, down.
Ellen Burstyn won an Oscar for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore back in 1975. She's one of the most respected actresses of her generation. And in 1986, ABC stuck her in maybe the worst possible time slot on television. The Ellen Burstyn Show premiered September 20th, 1986, 8:30 p.m. on Saturdays. She played a Baltimore College writing professor sharing a brownstone with her meddling mother, divorced daughter, and grandson. The problem wasn't really the show itself. The problem was what came on right before it. This show aired immediately after Life with Lucy. And when Lucy collapsed, which we'll get to, it dragged the Ellen Burstyn Show down with it like an anchor. The numbers were grim. It ranked 81st out of 83 programs, 7.6 rating. That made it the 3rd lowest rated series on network television. For comparison, Murder, She Wrote finished that season with a 25.4 rating. 8 episodes aired before ABC pulled it. Here's an interesting note about the cast. The actress playing Burstyn's daughter was Megan Mullally. This was a full decade before she broke out as Karen Walker on Will and Grace. And Elaine Stritch played Burstyn's mother despite being only 7 years older in real life. Burstyn later described the whole experience as a failed experiment. But given where they scheduled it, that experiment was rigged from the start. Number 7. Together We Stand, and Nothing is Easy.
Amy Randall, my famous daughter. Mwah! We're very proud of you.
This show wins the award for the most desperate retooling of the entire decade. Together We Stand was created by Sherwood Schwartz, the guy behind the Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island. The concept actually started as a failed Brady Bunch spin-off pilot way back in 1974. By 1986, it had evolved into a show about a couple raising a multiracial adoptive family. Elliot Gould and Dee Wallace Stone played the parents. The show premiered September 22nd, 1986. And here's the thing. The premiere actually did pretty well. It pulled a 17.1 rating in its Monday preview slot. But then CBS moved it to Wednesdays to make room for My Sister Sam. Suddenly, it was competing against Perfect Strangers and Highway to Heaven. Ratings collapsed. CBS pulled it after 6 episodes. And then came the retooling. When the show came back months later, it had gone through one of the most drastic overhauls in TV history. Elliot Gould's character killed off. Off-screen car accident. New title. Nothing is Easy. New opening credits. New theme song. New time slot. New cast member. The new theme song actually seemed to contain some meta commentary on the whole disaster. The lyrics included the line, "Nothing is easy, but you have to play the hand that you were dealt." Dee Wallace later said they decided to get rid of Elliot Gould's character and brought in new producers. And it became this negative show she didn't like at all. The retooled version bounced between 4 different time slots across 3 different nights before finally getting canceled. It finished with an 11.7 rating, 66th out of 83 shows. But here's your fun fact. One of the kids in this show was Ke Huy Quan. You probably remember him as Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Step on it!
Okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potato!
In 2023, he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Sometimes canceled shows produce Oscar winners. Number 6, The Wizard.
Okay, now, sit. Very good.
This one's been described as MacGyver as a dwarf, and honestly, that's a pretty accurate summary. The Wizard starred David Rappaport. He was the 3'11" English actor from Time Bandits. He played Simon McKay, a genius toy maker and philanthropist who uses his inventions to fight evil. A government agent protects him from various forces trying to exploit his technology. The show premiered September 9th, 1986. It ran for 19 episodes before CBS pulled the plug, and what happened next was genuinely touching. The creators launched a Save the Wizard campaign. Phone calls, letters, flyers distributed to schools. Children and families across the United States and Canada sent letters and petitions begging CBS to keep it on the air. CBS didn't budge. The show got replaced by something called Spies, which itself got canceled after only 6 episodes. Now, I need to tell you about the tragic aftermath. David Rappaport died by suicide on May 2nd, 1990. He was only 38 years old. It remains one of the saddest footnotes of 1980s television. But here's an extraordinary connection. The creators of The Wizard went on to create Baywatch, which became one of the most watched television programs in world history. Seen by an estimated 1.1 billion viewers in 142 countries. And in Baywatch's 5th season, they included a tribute. There was a character named Carter McKay, whose father was Simon McKay, a direct reference to Rappaport's character. The Wizard was never released on DVD, but its creators went on to make television history. Number 5, Starman. This was based on John Carpenter's 1984 film, the one that earned Jeff Bridges a Best Actor Oscar nomination. The TV version starred Robert Hayes. Yeah, the guy from Airplane. He played an alien who returns to Earth in human form to find his now teenage son. Michael Douglas served as executive producer. Starman premiered September 19th, 1986, Friday nights at 10 p.m. That put it directly against Falcon Crest and L.A. Law. Brutal competition. And then ABC kept shuffling the time slot around. Never let a stable audience form. They initially only gave it a half-season order, which is never a vote of confidence. Reviews were mixed at best. The Miami Herald called it warm and funny. The LA Times called it a drag. Metacritic gave it 34 out of 100. But here's where it gets interesting. The show developed a genuine cult following. Fans formed what they called Blue Lights Clubs across North America. They distributed bumper stickers that read, "Starman will return in a moment." They organized petition campaigns trying to save the show. The campaign failed, but some careers succeeded. Christopher Daniel Barnes, who played the teenage son, went on to voice Spider-Man in the landmark 1994 animated series, and Prince Eric in Disney's The Little Mermaid. A complete series DVD finally came out in 2012. Number 4, Our World.
We have a good rummage tonight. Some inspiring memories that we put in the scrapbook.
Here's a fascinating paradox. Our World was the lowest rated primetime show out of all 104 programs that aired during the 1986 to 87 season. Dead last. And it won an Emmy. This was a unique news documentary program created by ABC News president Roone Arledge. Linda Ellerbee and Ray Gandolf anchored it. Each episode examined a short period in American history using archival footage and new interviews. The problem? ABC scheduled it on Thursday nights, directly against The Cosby Show, which was the most watched program in America, drawing 63 million weekly viewers. Our World pulled a 6.5 rating with a 10 share, about 9 million viewers, against Cosby's 63 million. But here's the weird part. The show was actually profitable. Each episode only cost about $350,000 to produce, less than half the typical cost of an hour of primetime programming. With a dozen commercial spots sold at $35,000 each, the show generated an estimated $4 million in profit for ABC. It also won an Emmy for Outstanding Individual Achievement in News and Documentary Programming. That was for its episode about the 1938 War of the Worlds panic. When ABC decided to cancel it, an advocacy group called Viewers for Quality Television mounted a campaign that generated approximately 20,000 letters of support. ABC had been mailing out 39,000 study guides per month to educators who were assigning the show as homework. None of it mattered. And here's what made it worse. Ellerbee and Gandolf learned the show had been canceled from a segment on Entertainment Tonight, not from ABC directly. Linda Ellerbee went on to found her own production company. She created Nick News with Linda Ellerbee on Nickelodeon. It ran for 25 years and won 3 Peabody Awards. Sometimes getting canceled is just the beginning. Number 3. Amazing Stories.
Mother!
Steven Spielberg was coming off E.T. and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He was the hottest filmmaker on the planet. So NBC gave him something unprecedented. A guaranteed 44-episode, 2-season commitment, without even seeing a pilot. This was the most lavish deal in television history at the time. NBC committed approximately $750,000 per episode. Costs pushed to around $1 million per half hour. That's more than NBC was paying for The Cosby Show. Total commitment, approximately $44 million. The talent involved was staggering. Directors included Martin Scorsese, Clint Eastwood, Robert Zemeckis, Joe Dante, and Spielberg himself. Guest stars across the series included Kevin Costner, Kiefer Sutherland, Mark Hamill, Harvey Keitel, Patrick Swayze, Tim Robbins, and Christopher Lloyd. John Williams composed the theme music, and the ratings were disappointing. Season 1 ranked around 40th out of 67 shows. For most series, that would be fine. For a $44 million investment, disaster. Season 2 fell even further. But NBC was contractually locked in. They couldn't cancel even if they wanted to. Critics were not kind. One reviewer said the premiere episode's credits would have been more accurate if they'd read, based on a doodle by Steven Spielberg. Another called it one of the worst disappointments they'd ever had watching TV. The problem was that Spielberg authored, or co-authored, 16 of Season 1's 22 story ideas. As one person later put it, he unpacked his trunk of unused ideas. And some of them should have stayed packed. Despite the commercial failure, the show did win 5 Emmy Awards. And it became a cautionary tale about giving creators unlimited freedom and money without any oversight. An Apple TV Plus revival in 2020 got poor reviews and wasn't renewed. Number 2. The Colbys.
Where to put the orchestra? On the terrace this time, I think. Could you send Denise up to unpack?
$1 million per episode. Charlton Heston making up to $90,000 per episode. Barbara Stanwyck at $75,000 per episode. A cast that also included Catherine Ross, Ricardo Montalban, and Stephanie Beacham. This was supposed to be a guaranteed hit. The Colbys was a spin-off of Dynasty, which was the #1 show in America when this got greenlit. Originally titled Dynasty 2, The Colbys, it premiered in November 1985 with more hype than almost any spin-off in television history. Season 1 finished 35th in the ratings. Not terrible. But Dynasty itself was still in the top 10. Season 2 collapsed to around 64th place. Dynasty fell too. The spin-off was actually dragging down the original. And then there's Barbara Stanwyck. She was 78 years old. She had only taken the role because her house had been damaged in a fire, and she needed money. After 1 season, she told the co-creator that this was the biggest pile of garbage she'd ever done. She said it was one thing to know you're making money off vulgarity, but when you don't even know it's vulgar, that's just plain stupid. She called the show a turkey to the press, refused to come back for season 2. Her character got killed off in a plane crash in India. It was her final acting role. Behind the scenes, things were chaotic. Joan Collins flat out refused to appear. She actually urged her Dynasty castmates not to participate either. Charlton Heston reportedly sent one of his co-stars a letter criticizing them for unprofessional behavior on set. And then there's the ending. The series finale featured one of the most notorious moments in soap opera history. Fallon, stranded in the desert, gets abducted by aliens in a UFO. I'm talking a being in a body stocking with bloodshot eyes surrounded by revolving light bulbs. Multiple cliffhangers were left completely unresolved. The alien abduction was later addressed on Dynasty, where Fallon attended a support group for abductees. I am not making this up. So number 1, Life with Lucy. And now we arrive at what TV Guide later named the 26th worst TV series of all time. They called it, and I quote, "without a doubt the saddest entry on their list." Because this wasn't just a bad show. This was the end of an era, handled in the worst possible way. BC gave 75-year-old Lucille Ball terms that were virtually unprecedented. Complete creative control, no pilot requirement, no focus group testing, guaranteed payment for all 22 episodes, whether they aired or not. They were so eager to get Lucy back on television that they essentially gave her a blank check. Life with Lucy premiered September 20th, 1986. Ball played Lucy Barker, a grandmother who moves in with her daughter's family and helps run a hardware store. Gail Gordon was there too, at age 80, playing her late husband's business partner. The writers were Bob Carroll Jr. and Madeline Pugh Davis, the same writers from the original I Love Lucy back in 1948. The premiere debuted at number 23. Curiosity drove people to tune in. Then it plummeted. Week after week, the ratings just kept falling. By Cancellation, it ranked 73rd out of 79 shows. 9.0 rating. It was the 7th lowest rated show on all of television. Here's what went wrong. The show was originally conceived as an ensemble comedy, something like The Golden Girls. But ABC pushed Ball to repeat the classic I Love Lucy formula. Pratfalls, physical comedy, wacky situations. At 75 years old, asking her to do that kind of slapstick was a catastrophic miscalculation. One producer later said audiences were more worried for her safety than they were laughing at her pratfalls. ABC had actually offered to assign MASH writers to the show, but Ball insisted on Carroll and Pugh. They were loyal, but they were still writing for the Lucy of the 1950s, not a grandmother in the 1980s. Ball's publicist later explained that the writers were still writing for that Lucy, instead of a Golden Girls kind of character. The criticism was savage. The Washington Post called it an embarrassment. The Associated Press called it silly and sad. They asked how she could do this to herself. On November 17th, 1986, the day of the final taping, ABC informed the producers of the cancellation. Ball's husband Gary Morton decided not to tell her until after taping had ended. Ball appeared on Joan Rivers' show and said she could take criticism about the show. She'd done that for years. But being criticized for coming back at all, that threw her. She reportedly told a friend that she'd been fired, that ABC let her go because they didn't want to see an old grandma. She never attempted another series or film. She shut down Lucille Ball Productions. Her ex-husband DZ Arnaz died of lung cancer on December 2, 1986, just weeks after the cancellation. Ball's last public appearance was at the 1989 Academy Awards with Bob Hope. She received a standing ovation. She died on April 26, 1989. The show was never syndicated. It aired briefly on Nick at night in 1996. A complete series DVD finally came out in October 2019. One small piece of brightness. Jenny Lewis, who played the granddaughter Becky, later became the frontwoman of indie rock band Rilo Kiley. And Gail Gordon, at 80 years old, never once flubbed a line during the entire 13-episode run. Conclusion. So what do we take from all this? The 1986 television season was a perfect storm. Bad decisions, worse timing, an industry in complete chaos. All three networks changed ownership in 1985 and 1986. First time that had ever happened. NBC's Thursday night lineup was so dominant that scheduling anything against The Cosby Show was basically a death sentence. Cable was eating into broadcast audiences. The Big Three's primetime share had dropped from 91% in 1978 down to 75% by 1986. Networks responded by making desperate bets. Celebrity comeback vehicles that didn't understand their stars had aged. Expensive spin-offs that diluted the originals. Film-to-TV adaptations nobody asked for. And scheduling decisions that seemed almost designed to fail. But here's the thing about television history. The failures of 1986 scattered seeds that would bloom across decades. The Wizards creators went on to make Baywatch. Kay O'Brien's concept eventually became Grey's Anatomy. Our World's Linda Ellerbee built a 25-year Peabody-winning franchise. Ke Huy Quan from Together We Stand won an Oscar. Megan Mullally from The Ellen Burstyn Show became a comedy legend. Christopher Daniel Barnes from Starman became Spider-Man. Sometimes the shows that fail are just ahead of their time. Sometimes the people involved need to fail before they can succeed. And sometimes, as Barbara Stanwyck knew, you just have to call it what it is and walk away. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this trip through television's most spectacular failures, hit subscribe and check out our other videos on forgotten TV history.